Hi friends, I'm Miss Nancy Ruth from Parrot Road Ministries, and today we're doing a workshop on classroom management, especially in the church setting. I'm going to be answering several questions teachers have had about how to handle the kids in their class. This is great for new teachers, and it's a good review for those who are dealing with these issues themselves. All right, let's get started.
Hi, I'm Miss Nancy Ruth. I'm a children's minister and the co-founder of Parrot Road Ministries. We want to see kids living for Jesus.
I'm going to be looking at my notes down here to make sure I cover all the questions that have been asked. If I didn't cover your question, make sure you put it in the comments below and I will be sure to answer that. All right, question 1. What do I do with kids who finish early and make trouble? Whew, that's a trick. Basically, the answer to that is you need to plan more stuff. It doesn't have to be lots of content that are packed in, and sometimes when you have something like a craft, you want kids to be able to take the time to do it well and do it and take pride in what they've created so that they can show it to others. But then you have the kids who take 2 seconds and, yep, I'm done, now what? So in those situations, you need to have 2 activities. You need to have your primary activity like the craft, and then you need to have a backup for those who finish early. This could be something simple, kind of like a game. These are some games that a friend gave me. Jonah Go Fish and Bible Rummy, and there's some others on here. Bible Bingo is a great one. You can also do handmade games. My friend Mr. Mark from Mr. Mark's Classroom has a whole bunch of ideas, and I will put a link to his website down below. You can look those up. At our church, we have a special room full of Bible activities, Bible skill activities that teachers can use, and some are kept in the classrooms for if you're out of stuff to do and you need something for the children to do. I usually look for something active, because if you're doing something like just about dropped one of these games. If you're doing something like a craft, the kids that finish early aren't going to want to sit and do something else at the table. They're usually wanting to do something active. So I'm looking for active Bible skill type games as filler for these kinds of things. Also in curriculum, you can have a backup activity, that might be something you can do off to the side and have 2 groups going. Okay, that's that question. Question 2, these kids won't sit still and listen. What do I do? You may not like what I have to say, but I'll say it anyway. You have to adjust your expectations. Kids are not going to sit still and listen. They're kids. They're going to have to move. They're going to have to you're going to lose them if you make them sit still, sit rigid, and not say anything and listen to you for an hour. You're not going to be effective. I'm sorry. What you need to do is then think, okay, if I'm trying to teach to these children and teach in a way that they can understand, how can I do that? Look at your curriculum that you're using. They're designed for children. That's why they have all these activities and things for them to do. It's why they have review questions. That's why while you're telling the story, they try to look for interesting ways to do it, like sometimes with puppets or let the kids act it out or whatever. The general rule of thumb for how long kids can sit still and listen is about 1 minute for each, is that right? Yeah, 1 minute for each year of life. 1 minute for each year of life. 1 minute for each year of life. So if you're teaching 6-year-olds and you have a 20-minute lesson, it's not going to work unless you spice it up and have some movement and activity and something else to break it up. So keep that in mind. You'll want your lessons short, or you'll want a way to keep them engaged as you go. Don't expect the kids to just sit still and listen. You're just setting yourself up to get frustrated. Sorry. Okay, next question. How do I handle kids who speak out of turn or monopolize the conversation? Ooh, this is such a good question. You have kids who know all the answers and they are so excited and they want to share it with you. And we love that. And we want to encourage them to keep learning. However, you also have the quiet kids in the back of the room that are new that you want to make sure understood. So what do? Well, there are lots of different ways you can do it. The way I typically do it, there are 2 things that I do. First, I make sure kids raise their hands, most of the time at least, and I try to call on a different kid each time. So if you have that system and the same 2 kids are raising their hands and they both said something, I say something like, you guys have already said something, I want to hear from somebody I haven't heard from yet this morning. Okay, another thing that you can do, if they just kind of shout out and can't stand it and they say it and they answer every question, pull them aside when you're done. Or if it's really getting monotonous and you have a lot more questions to go, you can kind of phrase it gently and say, you know what? I'm so excited that you know these answers. I want to see who else was listening too. So you stay real quiet, and if nobody else knows the answer, I will ask you specifically. And usually they're okay with that. If you do find that they get a little troubled by it, pull them aside later and say, you know what? I need you to help me because there are kids in this class that don't know as much as you do. And I need to make sure that they understand. I have a challenge for you. If you think of something that maybe somebody else, a question that somebody else may have based on either something I forgot in the story or something that you think might not make sense to somebody who's never heard this Bible story, would you ask that question? And make sure you listen, because if I forget something in the story, I'm going to count on you to make sure I remember. When you give them that responsibility, that tends to really help, and that gives them something to do while they're not answering all the questions. Okay, next question. What do I do with kids who won't participate in anything? That's a challenge too. There are different reasons kids may not participate. It could be that they're really shy and they're new and they're not sure of this whole situation and they're a little intimidated. It could be that the activity you're doing, they just are not interested in that activity at all. So you have to figure out which side of the coin you're on. Typically, I don't force kids to do activities. I know there's different opinions on that, but I think along the lines of if they're not having fun and enjoying themselves in Sunday school or in this particular setting, they're not going to come back and hear more about Jesus. So I try to look for a way to include them and let them still participate. Like if you're playing a game and you have a kid who's really not into the game, you might ask them to take score, to keep the score on the whiteboard, or to be the timekeeper or something where they don't have to be involved in the physical game. If it's a matter of you're doing story time and they're sitting way off to the corner, let them sit over there. They're still listening. In fact, you'll be really surprised. There's all kinds of stories of teachers who have given a Bible lesson and a kid was sitting off and even playing with something else, and then they started asking questions, sure that kid didn't know. So they asked that kid specifically, hey, so-and-so, Johnny, what do you think, what animal did Noah send out of the ark? And they knew the answer to every question. And the teacher could have sworn they weren't listening to a thing. So, okay, let them kind of sit off to the side. If you have a second teacher, they might go over and sit next to them so that they know that they're noticed and included and loved. Okay, if I didn't answer the specific situation you have in mind, be sure to put it in the comments. All right. How am I supposed to teach a lesson and correct kids at the same time? That's a challenge, let me tell you. Ideally, this should never happen. You should have a second teacher in the room. If that's the case, if you have two teachers, set it up in advance, talk about it. One of you leads an activity or teaches a lesson, and the other one is in charge of crowd control. Now, that doesn't mean while someone's trying to tell the story, they're going, Johnny, Susie, Joey, stop! That's disruptive, and that's what we're trying to stop the children from doing. It's not helpful if an adult is doing it too. However, there are ways to correct while another teacher is teaching. One of the simplest is just to go sit next to the children that are misbehaving. Often just that adult presence next to them, and they go and they start behaving. Another thing that you can do, if you kind of catch their attention, you wave at them a little bit and you look at them and you just shake your head and give them that look, the teacher look. They'll know that they're not supposed to do that. If they're still being disruptive, you pull them out, talk to them in the hallway about the behavior, and then you can go from there. And your children's director or children's minister or children's pastor should have some ideas of things you can do beyond that point. Now, say it's the exception and you're the only teacher in the room and you're trying to teach and lead a lesson at the same time. That's tough. Some of the same things apply. You can just stop the lesson if you feel like it needs to. You can start by the signals, like you point at somebody and you shake your head, or you look at somebody and you shake your head as you keep teaching. Or you might pause and say, Sammy, would you come and sit by me, please? I'm coming up with lots of boy names. It doesn't have to be a boy. Anna, would you come sit by me, please? And then they can come sit with you, and then that kind of helps the lesson. In extreme cases, you might have to stop the lesson completely and say, look, we are trying to study God's Word and learn about what the Bible says. But I can't do that because Lily and Patricia are talking. That makes me very sad. And it also is very rude. Would you please stop so that we can hear the Bible lesson? Now, don't do that all the time, because that's really putting a spotlight on somebody, and it's very intense. Okay, so try for the other methods first, and if you need to, you can do that. Okay, if that didn't answer your specific question, you might ask your children's pastor, director, minister. You can also put it in the comments below. All right, next question. How do I handle parents who come get kids early, right in the middle of the lesson? This just comes down to communication. Again, if you have 2 teachers in the room, it's easier, and you should have 2 teachers in the room for safety issues. If that's the case, the person leading the lesson or activity is still doing that. The other one can be by the door. As parents come, they can say, we're right in the middle of the lesson right now, or we're right in the middle of this activity. Can you give them just another minute? And usually parents are okay with that. There's a couple times where they're like having to go somewhere early, and that's not the case. And if that's, you can accommodate that. But that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do, try to plan your time together so that the Bible lesson isn't the end. And you try to hit those important points in the middle of your time together, rather than at the very beginning when kids are still arriving, or the very end where kids are leaving early. But really, it comes down to consistent communication. As you dismiss the kids and you let them go, don't just say, okay, bye. Tell the parents, or there's 2 things you can do. Tell the parents, hey, today we were learning about this. Or make sure you ask Zoe about this, okay? And so they know, whoa, this is more than just babysitting. They're more than just watching my kids while I'm doing what I need to do. They're learning something important here. And that's really what we want to communicate to parents. This isn't just, filling up time. We're laying foundations, biblical foundations that parents can build on with communication and conversations later that day or later that week. Parent handouts are great for that as well. Okay. I also emailed some of my teachers and asked them what they thought, and one of my experienced teachers had some great advice. I want to share that with you before we close. Okay, first one, she said, typically she doesn't have problems with the kids in her class. Granted, she's an experienced teacher, but keep that in mind. But she said often when kids are misbehaving, they may be bored or perhaps ill. That is true. If kids are not feeling well, they're going to act out because they're not sure what else to do. I mean, when we don't feel well, we don't want to sit and listen and participate and do all the things we're supposed to do either. So that's a possibility. Often when kids say that they're sick, the first thing I do is have them go drink some water, because it could be that they're dehydrated. It could be any number of things, but usually a drink of water will help. If that doesn't help, I have them have another drink of water and go to the bathroom. And if that doesn't help, you might have more serious illness involved. The board issue, we've kind of touched on before. You need to learn how to read your class, okay? If you're losing the kids in your class, it's time to change activities. If you're in the middle of your lesson, say, okay, we're gonna take an intermission. We're gonna go, everybody stand up, do 10 jumping jacks. All right, sit back down, we're gonna continue our lesson. Okay, so you gotta look for that kind of thing. So that was really good advice. Kids misbehaving may be bored or perhaps ill. The second thing she said is when kids don't get assistance outside of their time with you, they might need a little extra help, and they might be embarrassed to ask. Like if you're doing memory verses and you're trying to review memory verses and that kind of thing, and you have a kid who doesn't get the help at home to do that, you might kind of take that into consideration and give them a little extra help as you're working on verses and memorizing things. Also give them encouragement. You know, this kind of stuff you can't learn overnight. Most of us can't learn a verse really fast, but you just encourage them. And perhaps if that kid comes early or ends up being one of your later kids that stays, that's a great opportunity to continue to work a little bit more with that child, either invest in your relationship with them, asking them about their day and their week, or to review those verses and the things that you're learning in class. I hope those things have helped you. If you have other suggestions or questions, be sure to put those in the comments below. And I'll also put a link to those Bible skill games in the description as well. See you next time. Bye.